Hello, my name is Guilherme and I help engineers to be high-performing project managers. This content is part of the warm-up content for the project management journey. So, the management journey is an event where I'm going to talk about the step-by-step you should follow to further develop your project management career. If you're interested in that, you can click in the link below here in the link and subscribe for free. What I'm going to discuss today is common mistakes or pitfalls that any high-performing project manager should avoid. And of course, I have a big list there, but I'm just going to talk for some of them. I think they have happen quite often, and they're quite important. And I'm also, of course, going to discuss ways that you could avoid that. So, taking a look on the main mistakes I see there. Or, as I mentioned, it's a quite big list already, and this keeps evolving. What I hear, what I'm going to talk about in this point here is one mistake that I see happening quite often, which I call sitting the wrong chair. What does that mean? Yeah, it means that the project manager, he is there instead of taking his role as a project manager. The project manager is trying to take the role of another team member, and while doing that, he might be taking the decisions for the other team members. He might be doing the work for other people in the team, which in the end does not help the team itself and also does not help the project manager. This is a quite common mistake because what happens a lot of times, for example, you have someone that was working as a part of the team, and then at some point this person is promoted, and this person sometimes it takes some time until he really process and make the transition for the project manager position. But sometimes people like to micromanage or over control their team members because some of any type of reason out there. And why I'm saying this is quite common mistake, that's something that also happened with me. In the beginning of my career, I was working as a planning and controlling engineer, and at some point, after a couple of years, I got promoted for a project manager position. And of course, the responsibilities that you have as a project manager, they differ from the planning and controlling. And then I had someone reporting directly to me. And at some point, I start to look to this person, and I start to, like in this case, it was an energy and construction project. We were building, for example, a S curve there. Then at some point, I'm finding myself looking to everything the S curve and say, no, this is wrong. This is not should be like that. Having like a kind of mental discussion. And of course, it was not in one day, but it was a process at some point, because then I start to say I want to change everything here, but I also have a lot of other responsibilities that I need to take care of as a project manager. And at some point, I start to think, hey, but what do I see here? Let me try to put a different perspective with this problem. What is here, like in this case, what was there in the S curve being developed for the project, for tracking the project, that would create a problem for the project because there was maybe an error in the concept, something was really wrong, and then of course the output of the tracking that we would like to have in the project would be bad, which of course would be bad for the entire project management but also for the team performance. Or what I was looking there was like the things were not being done exactly as I would do it myself. And at some point then I figure, hey, but what is here, it's correct. That's not a problem that the outcome will be bad. The problem that I see right now is that that we have different people in the team. Gladly, always people are there different. And of course, you can imagine that no one will do something exactly like you would do yourself, or in this case, exactly how I would do it myself. But of course, I had to understand that was not a problem, because You need to trust your team members. The only way that you can work in a high performing team, the only way that you can achieve, that you can develop a high performing team, a high performing culture, if it's that if you trust your team and also if they have the space to do their own work. And that's a quite big problem that I see quite often, that project managers they keep sitting in the wrong chairs there, and they keep trying to make decisions from their team members. And I've seen all types of level of controlling in my career, for like from project managers that they would not know what's happening in the project, which is very bad, don't go there. But also from project managers that they try to say each and every step what each team member they need to do. And of course, because they're doing that, then first you do not develop the right culture for the team. You're not developing high performing people, and at some point you have the team members just sitting and waiting. And of course, if you are growing your career, and then if you are working, if you are having bigger projects, more challenging projects, more complex projects, you need to have those people taking the ownership, taking the initiative, thinking by themselves, and then working as a team to deliver the project, not waiting and sitting to someone to tell them what to do. So this is a quite critical item which I've seen quite often, and I did myself in the beginning of my career. And at some point also I figured this out. This sunk in me, and I start to change my behavior. But that's something that you really should avoid, because if you try to micromanage your team, if you want to decide which step your each of your team members they are going to take next, if you want to take all their decisions, if you want to do their works, because I've seen sometimes even the project manager doing the work for their team member, which is kind of absurd. Because of course, then you get something you get someone that's very dissatisfied and very disengaged from your team, which is does not help you in the project to deliver anything. But you also, as a project manager, you get completely overloaded with the work, because instead of focusing what you should focus as a project manager, you're focusing what your team members are doing. So every time that you see yourself in a position questioning everything, you should ask yourself first, is that a problem because we have a problem in the outcome? Maybe then if your team member, maybe they're new, maybe they're learning, and maybe if they're going to do something that will create a big damage in the project, then you say, okay, then that's something that you should discuss, but you also have proper ways to do it instead of saying this is and doing the work yourself. Or you're looking for a perspective because you're kind of you were in a position in that position in the past, and then you see, but I would have done it differently, because if you would have done differently it's fine, but if the outcome is good in the end, it does not matter, it should not be a problem for you. So this is something to avoid, you need to avoid again, because to have a successful team, to deliver a successful project, you need to work as a team. And like every time you are taking other people's decisions, you're taking their responsibility, do not give space to them to work, you're doing a very bad thing, and you are causing a damage in the long term. You might solve a problem in a very short period of time, or in a very short time frame, but for the long term, that for sure it's not going to help in your project. So be aware of that, and that again, I've seen that happen. It happened and also with me in the past. I've seen that happen a lot of times, and even nowadays I've seen that with some of my peers. They're taking some responsibility because they know they did that in the past. They just don't want to let it go. But you should not do that. Your job as a leader there is making sure that you are creating an environment so everyone in your team can perform well. And at some point, you are going to have a nice culture. You are going to be in a high performing team, which I can tell you by experience. That's that's the most amazing thing when you figure that you are working this type of team. So for sure, that's a pitfall that you should avoid. Another pitfall that I want to discuss is the firefight mode, which I've seen a lot. where people they're just working on urgent stuff. The next, what's the most urgent item that they should do next? There's basically no planning. They're not foreseeing anything in the future. They only see what needs to happen this week in the next week, and they go from one fire to another, and they keep going like that. Of course, that means that basically everything that you need to do is urgent. You're pushing a lot of people because there's everything is urgent, and of course people don't like it. And in the end, of course, you always have problems, and from time to time, you have some stuff that is urgent and needs to be done with more time sensitive manner. But this should not take 100% of your time or most of your time. You should always going to have those things to do it, and but you need to figure out a way how to move forward then, and how you would move forward from the firefight move forward from the firefight mode, which it is with a proper planning, proper risk management, and also making sure that you have a right routine with the right prioritization. Why? Because let's think that you're just focusing what you need, what needs to happen for the project this week. Then you're not thinking about, for example, in the next month. But what happens is because you're not foreseeing or you're not looking for anything in the future, you're not looking for possible risks or possible issues that you might have there, or you're not looking for issues that you have there that are not uncovered there. What's going to happen is once you solve those fires that you have here, you're going to have a bunch of more. And this works if you're talking about a waterfall, or also if you are talking about agile. Like if you are working as a scrum master, a good scrum master, of course, he needs to be there to lead the team as a true leader, to help the team to solve their challenges, to help them to clear roadblocks. But also one of the main goals of planning risk management is to avoid issues. So every time you do that in advance, you can avoid this firefight mode. Every time you do not do those things in advance, then you enter in those urgent items that mess up everybody's agenda. For example, if you are working in an organization, you are working as a project manager, and one day someone pop up, say, I need an urgent report for, I don't know, for the CEO and needs to be done this afternoon. Well, then probably you need to stop whatever you're doing to solve this report. But what happened in most of the case, even the CEO, the director, or whoever leader that, they want to see some type of information with some frequency. Then that's the kind of thing that you can plan. Say, I'm going to share with you this report. This is the template every second Monday of the month. And you agree on that, then you can plan on that. But if every month it's a different day and people are cannot prepared of that, then every month you have a fire that people need to focus on and work on that. So this is just one example how this firefight mode can do that. And again, when you talk about prioritization, it's very important that you also look for what's important not in the long term, for things that are important but not urgent there. So you need to have a proper prioritization there. Otherwise, you are going to continue work on firefight mode. Then you're going to have more fires, more fires, more fires, more fires, more overload, more extra work for your team, and things will be more messy at some point that people will say, that's enough for me. I do not want to work like that anymore. And maybe this person is even you. So again, quite important here to make sure that you can minimize the amount of firefighting that you do in your daily basis, is to have a good planning and risk management process. Why? Because then you are overlooking for the future. You are looking to the future, try to identify risks that you can solve to avoid that you're going to have issues that will start fires that you need to go for this firefight mode. There's another one that I always discuss. This is something, of course, it's a free translation from Brazil, from Portuguese. That it's like you're counting the ants passing, but you're missing the elephants passing by. And why I'm saying that? Because depending on the type of project that you're working on, you can have hundreds or even maybe thousands of tasks. It's not uncommon that if you're working in a big project or a big program, you're going to end up with a MS project timeline that has thousands of tasks, or and even though those tasks can be further breaking down on items that you need to do in your routine. But if you have this huge amount of tasks, and of course you have limited resources and you have limited time, then you cannot tackle all those tasks with the same level of importance. Then you need to identify those tasks, filter them to make sure that you can focus in the 20% of the items that will bring 80% of the results. Yes, Pareto, of course. This is also called the Pareto rule. And I've seen people doing that, and people not doing this prioritization and not filtering these up. Then you start to have a lot of discussions, and even sometimes meetings and so on, for items that they have very small value added and very low impact in the project, but you end up consuming a lot of your time and your team's time doing that. For example, a few years ago, in one of the projects I was managing here, I had to send few samples from the Netherlands to the factory in Bulgaria. And of course, at the time we were talking about plastic connectors, very small parts. Then I arranged something as a FedEx to send it. And suddenly one of the managers, he decided to block my shipment. That would cost, at the time, probably 10 euros. And he gave me a big speech why this was a complete waste, because of course there was all people traveling all the time. This was before COVID, between the Netherlands and Bulgaria. It was just a matter of finding one, and those people, this person could carry this by hand, and we could save the money of the 10 euros of the freight cost there. And this discussion with me, then of course he blocked it. I could not go forward. Then I had to contact the design engineer that I had working my project in Bulgaria, and we had a discussion, and we ended up trying to find someone that would travel the next days, one day or another. In the end up, yes, we ended up finding someone, but what happened? This manager, he wasted his time making a big speech how I could save the cost of the project, 10 years, which in the end, this project by itself, it had a business case of few hundred million euros. Then 10 euros will not make any difference, and I doubted that 10 years will make a difference in anything that you do in your life. Then he wasted his time, he wasted my time there. Then again, he kind of frustrated me in the process, because it was something so trivial. The micromanaging was so much that I was like, why I'm here? Then I got frustrated and demotivated in the process of having this discussion. But then I talked with another with my design engineer that was working in Bulgaria, and we start to look for people. Yeah, if we count, he probably lost maybe a couple of hours there. I lost a couple of hours there, maybe at least half an hour of the manager in having this discussion. In the end, if we add up all the money that we spend just in hours to discuss something that had zero impact in the project, and we could have used this time to do something that was really important. So this is a mistake that I've seen happening quite often, and I've seen happening in all different levels, that sometimes you enter discussions, then you have directors, managers, a lot of design team, then we have meetings to discuss, and the impact of the decision, it's very low or almost irrelevant for the project. And sometimes if you add up also only the cost of hours of having those discussions, it almost account for the cost of the decision that you are taking there by itself. Then again, this is a pitfall because not only you're wasting your time discussing something that has basically zero value added for anyone or for the end of the project, but also that creates frustration in the team because then depending on the type of discussion, as I just mentioned in my case, was something very trivial. And then instead of building the trust and building a relationship, he was using his leadership capital there for something that was completely irrelevant. So how you can avoid to end up in this pitfall? Well, what you need to do there is understand your project in a level where you can make a Pareto, you can use the Pareto principle, or you can make a Pareto analysis where you're going to identify what is 20% of the items that will bring 80% of the results, and you are going to focus on them if you want to be a high performing project manager. And of course, you still have a lot of tasks that they need to be done or not, but those tasks then can be decided faster, or you can delegate those tasks for other team members. For example, I will delegate a lot of other decisions for for example, for a buyer in my team. We had to buy a few products, and those products we were buying, I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 of euros. For a business case, in this case, was for the total program, I believe, 250 million euros. I was not looking very detailed what the buyer was doing. I was just trusting on him. Say, okay, you have a solution? Yes, I think that's the best solution. I check with those suppliers. Can we go forward? Yes or no? Yes, and move forward. Why? Because this it was something that, of course, it had to be done for the project. But as long as we could get this on time, this cost discussion with supplier we should go was almost irrelevant for the project because this was just few products, one time buy, with very low value compared with the total budget, and that could be the buyer could solve it much better without my interference there. Of course, if I would decide to be annoying, I could go there and say, yeah, but I think you can negotiate a discount and blah blah blah. Yes, he might have been able to negotiate, I don't know, a 2% discount, 3% discount, which in the end of the project would not be even relevant there. So that's why it's important. Of course, when we were talking about a more relevant product there for the project that would impact the entire mass production, that would cost the project millions of euros, of course, then that's when you enter to work together. Then you are investing your time in something that really matters for the project, but you should avoid that you are keep looking for all the small items that needs to be done there and trying to micromanage your team. Here again, when I talk about this, you kind of enter those pitfalls. They happen together because if you're focusing on all the small things that happen in your project, you are you're forced sometimes you are micromanaging people in your team, then you're trying to take decisions that should not be you that are taking those decisions, and because you're doing that, you end up that you're not investing your time properly. Then it means that you have a lot of firefight, that you're going to end up in a lot of firefight mode. So it's quite important to understand. And again, this is just of course in Portuguese we would say that as a joke. That's why I'm mentioning counting. Then you're just looking for the ants there, but then there's a bunch of elephants passing that part that you do not see. That's a huge that you do not see. But what do I mean by that? Please make sure that you are working the right priorities. Use the Pareto principle, focusing on what's relevant for your project. And again, if you start to avoid these, you also help in the other two. And basically, the last pitfall that I want to discuss is one that is not communicating the real status of the project. Basically, this one, that's what you are going to hear a lot. People talking about watermelon projects. First of all, because I've got this question more than once already, people ask how to manage watermelon projects. First thing to manage a watermelon project is realize that that should never exist. You cannot have a watermelon project if you don't know it's a project that's green from outside but it's completely red inside. You cannot have a project like that. You can only have a watermelon project if you're not properly informing the status of the project, which again I've seen happening in my career in the companies I've worked on, but that's how things will end up bad. Then if you're working a project, and if you, for example, you take over a project from a project manager that's leaving a company or for you're being promoted or whatever reason, you need to have a full assessment of the status of the project there. And if you find out that the communication going on saying that everything is good, but you have a lot of problems in the project, the first thing that you should do is communicate the real status of the project. And I get it, that's not comfortable. That sometimes if you have a project that's red, that you're going to get a lot of questions, then you are going to get attention that sometimes you don't want from management, from leaders. But that's part of it. I can tell you by experience. Uh, Keeping communicating a project as green will not help your project, will not help the company, it will not help yourself. Because sooner or later, this red situation will surface, then you're going to be in a much worse situation. Because that's that's where no company want to be. That you think that the no manager, no director want to have this situation that he thought that everything was under control, but then he learned it later on that everything was a mess, but there he was not only being informed for the real situation of the project. And I see that because sometimes I even people told me, but I do not want to have a project in a red status. Well, neither do I. But what's the real situation there? If the project's delayed or if there's an issue there, there's an issue there. You need to communicate things properly. There's no way around it. There's no say, yeah, I'm going to say that everything is okay, but I'm going to try to fix this behind. What happens is if you do not communicate the status of the project properly, you also do not get the attention, the resources, and the priorities that sometimes that are required so you are able to solve the issue. And I've seen that happen so many times in my career, like with peers in the company that where we were facing a lot of challenges and I was already a project manager and I was communicating, I have those issues, those risks in my project, there's this kind of type of challenge. And then you look for the other project manager and you say, no, my project, everything was okay. What happened? 1 year or 2 years, this person, he left the company and the company figured out the project had a huge budget problem. They had a huge delay. Why? Because he did not want to communicate the real status. He would say, people are telling me just to say that everything is fine and I'm going to do that. That's not good work. That's not good project management. That's not the situation that you want to be. And I can tell you again, I've had a lot of projects in a red situation for all kinds of reasons that you can imagine, for all kinds of issues that you can imagine, from bankruptcy in suppliers, from like thunderstorms that destroyed part of my construction, and then of course blocked part for a part of the scope of the project that we need to rebuild and so on. Strikes and all the kind of technical issues, failures on tests and so on. But every time I communicate the real situation and say this is red, this is what we are doing, this is what we need support, and this is what we expect to have an outcome. In the end, everyone appreciates that. And also the management team, the leadership team, the directors or whoever you want to call, they appreciate that. Because first, you're communicating properly. This shows to everyone that they can trust on you as a professional. That even in a very difficult situation, you're not going to shy away and just say that everything is okay so you avoid a difficult path there. So communicating the real status of the project is quite important. And if the project is green, beautiful, you should communicate that the status is green. If it's yellow, you should communicate as yellow. And if it's red, you should communicate as red. Of course, if you're working a bit more mature company, they have an objective way to measure these. They also have criteria when a project should be green, yellow, and red. But unfortunately, not all companies are that mature yet. And you have companies because they do not want to say, and you also have managers because they do not want to report a bad situation for a higher management, that they are going to create an entire rainbow to report something. And I've seen that the status report was red, yellow, and green, like a traffic light sign. And then somebody they start to create, okay, but it's not red yet. Let's create something that's kind of amber, that's kind of orange. Then on orange they create a light red, or then you end up with a completely messed up rainbow. Like, this does not help anyone. Like, simplifying things, it's how usually the path. And making sure that you communicate those things properly, that's quite important. So make sure that you are always communicating the real states of the project, even in the hard situations. That's the only way that you can avoid those watermelon projects. And if by chance someone left the company and you are taking over a project that you find out that it's a watermelon project, make sure that you communicate it right away. And of course, make sure that you also look for solutions, that you're going to work with your team, you're going to create a plan. But very important, make sure you communicate the status of the project. If it's red, it's red. No way around it. Well, those are the points that I would like to discuss today. Let me know what you think about the content. If you have questions about it, feel free to put here in the comments. I'll make my best to answer everything. If you like the content, please click the button like here. If you think that someone else would like this content, please share with other people. If you click the button like, if you share with other people, that also helps me to create more content and understand what can bring value to you. And again, I'm going to make an event called Project Management Journey. You can subscribe for free in the link here below. And there I'm going to talk about the steps, how to further develop your career in project management. If you have any other feedback for me, feel free to reach out. Also, if you are not doing that still, feel free to follow my Instagram page where I share daily content on project management. Thank you and see you soon. Bye.